Good morning, YouTube friends. Thanks so much for coming by, and welcome to another episode of the Untamed Olive. Today we have got a spicy, delicious, super simple mushroom ramen coming at you. Keep on watching to see how to make it. Okie dokie guys, we are starting off with a large pot and a good glug of olive oil, probably about 2 tablespoons here. Once that's heated up a little bit, I'm going to add 5 cloves of garlic that I've minced pretty finely. We're going to just let those soften for a couple minutes. Once they're cooking away here, I am going to add 4 ounces of chopped shiitake mushrooms. These are going to give it an awesome flavor to our broth, make it a little bit more meaty and hearty. So we're just going to, I don't know what I'm doing here, eventually stir those around and let them get a little bit brown and a little bit cooked down before we add the rest of our ingredients. Okay, now that our mushrooms have cooked down a little bit and our garlic is nice and translucent, I'm going to add in that jalapeno that I just showed you. I'm going to start with half the jalapeno, just slicing it. I'm leaving the seeds in to add with the heat. If you're not into super spicy, I recommend removing the seeds. I'm starting with just half, and then when we start taste testing our ramen broth, we can add more if we need to. I don't want it to be too spicy out the gate. Okay, then we're just going to add that little handful in there and let it sweat a little bit and move on to our next ingredient, which is fresh ginger. This is going to give it a nice little zing to our broth here. I've got about 2 tablespoons of minced fresh ginger that I'm going to dump in and let saute up with these other ingredients to get the flavors all melded together. Once we do that, we'll start adding the miso and the broth to layer all these flavors even more. The more elements we have, the more rich and complex our broth is going to be, and that's what we are going for with a good ramen, right? Okay, ginger's in. We're just moving that around a little bit, letting it get together with all those other ingredients. Now we're going to move on to our miso. You can use any store-bought miso paste. If I said that right. I went with a Japanese-style red miso. It has a little bit more strong of a flavor. You can go with white miso, yellow miso, whatever you prefer. It lasts forever in your fridge, so it's kind of a good thing to just keep in your fridge for a quick soup or to add to a stir fry or anything. So I promise at some point I will show you what this miso looks like. Just looking at these mushrooms sauteing away. Here we go, I'm getting it together now. This is the brand that I bought of red miso. And I'm going to start with 2 heaping tablespoons, and we're going to go from there. A lot of this is just taste testing to see what your preferences are. We're getting a base going, and then we'll tweak it to our desired liking. So I'm adding those in there, and then I'm going to use a spatula to just mix it around into all the ingredients so there aren't too many chunks. And then to give our soup more flavor, I opted to use a not beef broth because I felt like it would go with the mushroom flavor really well and make our flavors even more complex. So I'm plopping in 2 bouillon cubes here. You can of course just use veggie broth if you'd like, or not chicken broth, whatever you've got in your pantry. I just like how these flavors really went together really, really well. We're going to do the same thing where we kind of smush them around, get them broken up a little bit, and then we're going to start adding our water. So now I'm slowly adding in a quart of water here while I'm mixing to make sure we don't have any giant clumps of miso or bouillon cube. And we're going to eventually add another quart as well and let this simmer for a little bit. It's already looking super rich. Okay, quart number 2, heading on in, and then we're going to add 2 tablespoons of liquid aminos. Liquid aminos is essentially just a wheat-free soy sauce, so you can use soy sauce as well, whatever you've got on hand. I'm going to stir that in, and then I'm going to do a little taste test before I add anything else. Don't want it to be too salty. The flavor is already super rich. I did decide to add a little bit more miso, of course some roasted red pepper flakes, and some black pepper. This is the base here, and then you go with it and choose whatever flavors work for you. Honestly, it'd be perfect how it is. I just wanted to tweak it and make it even more flavorful. And of course, as always, I will link below what I ended up using for the entire batch here as well. And of course, for a healthy meal, we cannot forget our greens, right? I have got a baby bok choy here. I'm just going to chop it up and toss it in and let it simmer with the broth. Let those flavors go in, let it soften up really nicely. And we are pretty much good to go with the broth side of our ramen. Okay, and honestly, you can just eat this broth on its own. It's perfect on a winter day, but we are making ramen, so we need some noodle action, right? I kind of cheated. I couldn't find some actual ramen noodles, but I did find these thin udon noodles that I ended up boiling up, and they worked perfectly. I'm just boiling them in a bit of olive oil and sea salt and obviously water. And once they're done cooking in about 7 minutes, I rinse them under cold water, and I'm going to store them separately from the soup just so they don't get super mushy. And the broth, once you put the noodle into your bowl, the broth will heat up the noodle, so I wouldn't worry about reheating it afterwards. I'll show you here in a moment how we built that ramen. Okay, our noodles are done. I've got a little bit in a bowl here. I'm just going to pour over this piping hot broth here, and I've got some fresh radicchio here, which is going to give us some good crunch, some more cruciferous veggie goodness, and it's got a little bit of a bite and bitterness to it, which is really nice with the rest of these flavors. I'm going to add that on top along with a little bit more fresh jalapeno, and we are good to go. Yum! Thank you so much for watching, guys. I hope you love this recipe as much as I do, and I will see you soon. Cheers!